Hello and welcome to the second day of Wales Tech Week, Tech Summit, brought to you by Technology Connected and Partners. We have another incredible lineup of speakers in store today at the Ignite stage. And our first session of the day is the Circular Horizon, in partnership with HP, looks at how circular thinking drives efficiencies to the whole product lifecycle and how you can adapt this thinking to your business. Chairing the panel is Nick Miller, Director of Miller Research. He is a highly experienced public policy consultant with more than 20 years' experience of tackling challenging projects across the UK. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Nick, along with Nancy and our panellists to the stage. And I hope you all enjoy. Diolch yn fawr.
Thanks very much. Is that on? Yeah, you can hear me great. Well, welcome. I mean, we could just do a round table here with, so pull up a chair, come near, and let's have a good conversation. And we want to involve you in this as well, not just the panelists. Anyway, we've got 4 great panelists, and we're going to have a good conversation, whatever. And I'm very pleased to be here today with you all. I'm going to get each one of you just to introduce yourselves briefly as we go through. I'm going to start off with you, Nancy, as our sponsor. Nancy Powell is Manager for Sustainability at HP for UK, Ireland and EMEA, which is pretty big territory.
It is. Thank you. Oh, I don't know if that's... Oh, there we go. Thank you, Nick, and thank you to our small but perfectly formed audience. It's lovely to be here in sunny Wales. I'm Nancy, as Nick said. I cover the EMEA region for HP for sustainability. I'm a sustainability generalist, talking about carbon, circularity, a range of other themes that are really pertinent to our customers, pre-sales and after sales. And within HP, we have a team of people who are subject matter experts. So there's lots of specialists in HP who are looking at the discrete elements of sustainability across our supply chain and operations. But I am here to speak to customers and to really represent the customers and what they're thinking and talking about in terms of circularity.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nancy. Okay, on to James Adams, who's Director of Maconda Solutions, and you're working in circular construction. Tell us a bit about it.
Thank you, Nick. Well, I think circular construction is an interesting one because construction sort of typically defies modernisation. So my background is in the delivery side. I was on site as project manager before moving into circular economy. So we are now a consultancy, focusing especially on material passports, so using digital tools, but really understanding how these digital tools can actually be integrated into construction. So how is this going to work on site? How does this work with the supply chain? And I think what we're seeing is really the importance of having the digital tools as an enabler, but the governance factors, you know, really having those processes and those methods in place.
That's great. So that's where the tech meets circular economy. Exactly. Awesome. If you could hand over to Eoin Bailey. And Eoin is UK Innovation and Circular Economy Lead for Celsa Steels.
Seven Steels.
Sorry, changed your name.
we used to be called Celsa Steel. Now we're called Seven Steel, and we are a steel producer that produce predominantly materials for the construction sector. So reinforcement steel for concrete structures and sections, but we do it by recycling scrap metal. So we have an electric arc furnace in Cardiff that takes about 1.2 million tonnes of scrap from all over the UK economy, converting it or transforming it into new steel and then delivering that new steel back to the construction sector again. So predominantly we've been buying the scrap from the market, from the general market in the UK, which incidentally is an export market. The UK produces between 10 and 12 million tonnes of scrap every year and actually exports nearly 90% of all of that. So we have to battle on that market to keep the material in. But what we've been more actively doing is going and working directly with construction companies, recovering material from deconstruction or demolition, and then closing the loop and delivering that material back in. So that's what we've been exploiting really over the last few years.
So you're kind of servitizing it?
We're getting to it. We're getting to offering kind of almost like steel making as a service. And eventually we will look at steel itself, steel components as a service solution in. So that's where we're kind of looking to embrace and truly, I suppose, enhance the circular economy across the supply chain.
Brilliant, thank you. And last but absolutely not least, Dr. Andy Rees, OBE, who is Head of Waste Strategy for Welsh Government, and widely acknowledged as the godfather of recycling in Wales, and brought us to the point where we are as sort of second in the world for domestic recycling. What's your next challenge, Andy?
Oh, you've stolen all my best lines there. Our circular economy strategy, published in 2021, was deliberately called Beyond Recycling. So we want to build on what we've done with recycling. Although, just to mention recycling, we've kind of majored on the high quality side of things, which is why everyone has to separate out their dry recyclables and food waste, including in venues like this. So good to see the separate bins downstairs. But yeah, going above recycling is a big challenge. There's lots we need to do. So I really look forward to the debate. So things like remanufacturing, repurposing, re-engineering, making things last as long as possible, servitization, so economy business models, et cetera, all need a lot of encouragement. So I'm looking forward to hearing the views of other panel members here who are at the sharp end. We just do the blue sky thinking. So.
That's great. Thanks, Andy. Okay, I'm going to start with James. And we touched on tech. Let's start with tech. You're involved with MFAs and material passports and stuff like that. How does tech play its part, and how important is it?
I mean, it is critical. I think what we've seen with circular economy, why I believe it's accelerated so much in the last few years. I mean, I've been in construction for a while, and I remember circular economy was almost seen as just trying to avoid landfill. Downcycling was still common. That was seen as a win, where all of a sudden, probably in the last 3 years, there's been a real focus in the industry on reuse, on upcycling, on managing, say, steel waste in a manner that is consistent with circular economy. And I think that's all happened because we've suddenly seen the digital infrastructure that can actually support this. You're not doing it on site with a spreadsheet or a clipboard because that doesn't work. You really need that connectivity. You need to be able to tag assets, share that with people who can make use of it. But I would say that tech is, I would always call it an enabler. It's a tool, but it relies on people. What we're seeing within construction is you really need to consider how you are or how you map that set of activities, that set of stakeholders, how they're going to interact and use that tech. Because simply having the solution in place isn't in itself enough. It's necessary but not sufficient. So I think what we're finding is really interesting is trying to map those governance mechanisms that will allow people to make use of that and really giving them a blueprint to be able to make use of things like material passports, secondary exchange marketplaces. And we found that really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Nancy, at HP, you're in a very different field, but you're experiencing some of the similar things. And where's the driver for a shift to circular activity coming from?
Multiple directions. I would say customers first. Well, actually, I'm going to start with regulation. HP is obviously a global company. We've got markets like France, where for the public sector procurement, you might have to 20% of the hardware that is going into a public sector customer might be refurbished or second life hardware. You might have something like a repairability index. So criteria against which your hardware is assessed is the ability for it to be repaired. So what might be regulation in a market like France becomes an opportunity outside of France. So it's an opportunity for differentiation, to compete, because most customers, whether it's public sector or enterprise, will have sustainability as a component in a tender process. So your ability to meet that and over-deliver against it becomes a competitive advantage. Customers are asking for it. It's also, we have public-facing targets for it, and we've had it for quite a long time. From design phase through to end of life, HP has a target to get 75% circularity into its business. Now, there are efficiency and commercial reasons for those targets. So on all fronts, we're experiencing it makes sense, it makes business sense, customers are asking for it, and if we want to get ahead of regulation in the majority of markets, it's the right thing to do and to design for. So yeah, that would be the...
So within your organisation, you're pushing an open door?
Yeah,
that's,
for sure.
Yeah, that's really good. So Eoin, how does that look for you? And I know you've been trying to work in circular mechanisms for some time now in this space.
Well, within the steel industry in particular, I think the steel industry is a foundation industry. So effectively, and like many other industries, and particularly the heavy end of industry, we seem to be losing so much of in the UK. But ultimately, if we're not able to do and deliver circular solutions, then we feel that the industry itself, the construction sector, the organisations, the supply chain we supply into, are less likely to deliver circular solutions going forward or design for circular solutions. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, and my background is design. So I've been on the other end of the supply chain where I've been designing circular solutions, but we don't have the supply chain that can deliver. Hence the reason I feel it's important to work with the foundation industries to help them understand what they can do, what value they can add. I suppose the drivers, the things that are happening within the industry, the London in particular, the policy is driving a lot of this. So you have the need or the demand for circular economy statements for new planning applications in the GLA, and that's actually driving business towards us. That we're getting calls from, calls from developers and their main contractors to work in collaboration. It's giving us a much further view of much timely view of what's happening and when a project is going to happen, whereas traditionally we would get a call 2 weeks before steel needs to be delivered. Now we're getting a call several years before steel needs to be delivered. But the other thing is it's people are realizing, developers and contractors are realizing it makes really good business sense to work directly with the steel maker itself, to, in the first instance, selling the steel back to us is a lot cheaper, a lot more beneficial, because one, they get paid directly themselves, not as opposed to some other subcontractor getting paid for your material.
Oh, it would have gone through a demolition contractor.
It'd go to a demolition company, and demolition company will sell it to the general market. Whereas now, site owners, developers can realise actually we can pay them directly. And in fact, supermarkets, actually, we're doing a lot of work with supermarkets over the last couple of years, where when they refresh a store, what they have done previously is pay the waste management contractor to empty a store out and fill skips full of materials. They had no idea where that material was going. But now they're realising actually if they give it to us directly, we can pay them, and they start with cash in the back pocket. So there's a number of different drivers as to why it's becoming more and more prevalent. And but ultimately it makes good business sense.
That's great. And Andy, in terms of enablers, what can a government like Welsh Government do to enable? I mean, I was fascinated to hear that France is so far ahead of the game in areas like procurement, for example.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for many years now, we've been guided by sustainable development, and it's become a statutory duty. So that pushes us to sort of try and get maximum benefits at all levels, and look at the relevant enablers that can help us do that. Obviously, a lot of things are devolved to Wales, but our ability to drive some changes is a bit limited because we live in a global market, and there need to be global standards for these sort of things. So we work where we can to drive change, particularly on recycling, because we've actually got all of the levers there. So that was relatively straightforward. But other things we've done on a joint UK basis. But procurement is an area where we are doing certain things, but we can do a lot more. I'm trying to think of the sort of tech angle, but on remanufacturing, for example, we encourage all our public sector bodies to procure remanufactured first for office furniture, tables, chairs, etc. And luckily, we've got a company in Wales who manufacture their office chairs deliberately so they can be repurposed and remanufactured without giving away who they are. But so that there's all sorts of opportunities there and jobs in that remanufacturing and repurposing. But I think we need to do a lot more on the public procurement side. We already, I mean, I'm sure most of you have already done this. We've all leased printers for years, possibly from HP. That is a circular economy business model, the leasing of printers. Yeah. But we need to encourage more of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I must admit, I'm going to say it, I've got orange box office chairs, and we bought them second-hand 15 years ago, and I've never thought about my office chairs since. I used to hate my office chairs. They're a joy. Eoin, you wanted to comment on?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something Andy mentioned briefly about sustainable development and sustainability. I think we need to be mindful that So we're in terms of one of the other drivers from our perspective is our low carbon steel. So we're in comparison to other steel businesses, we have an EPD, an environmental product declaration, which is 374 kilograms of CO2 per ton of steel. When you compare that to other steel producers such as blast furnace steel, that's around 2.5 tons of CO2 per ton. So that's the marked difference between the two different steel processes. But the reason I mentioned EPDs and carbon, when we do life cycle assessments, we only, and in construction or any other life cycle assessment, we only measure the negative impacts of the materials we're procuring, the processes in which we deliver. We don't, in life cycle assessments and in sustainable development and in sustainability generally, it doesn't really add gives the opportunity to add value back in. So if for example, if James's customers are looking at reusing components, in life cycle assessment, there's no real incentive to do that. It's just a nice story to tell, because the accounting system, and that, I think it's a misnomer when you call it carbon accounting. We don't account for carbon. We measure the negative elements. At least if it was compared to financial accounting, you'd have a profit and a loss, whereas in carbon you don't, and it's completely contradicting what a circular economy actually is. So we have this dilemma where we're trying to reduce the impact, but we're stopping ourselves or holding ourselves back when we're just purely looking at carbon as a measure of impact.
It's quite strange, that, because it's like one area where agriculture is actually in front for once, where you have got that balance in the carbon accounting in terms of soil carbon and stuff like that. James, how important is it and how difficult is it to establish relationships with people like Eoin to develop your business?
I think we're certainly finding it really, really critical now. It has, as Eoin said, it's moved on from the days where they would be getting a call from the demolition contractor saying, oh, can you maybe take this or give us a price for that? It's much more strategic, and certainly we see part of our role in the market is helping to integrate and make that network work for the developers, for the main contractors, so that Eoin and others, manufacturers, can get early access to these materials, to these products on a site. Because ultimately what you want to be doing is giving a developer options to be able to say, well, we have 900 tons of steel in this building. Maybe we can reuse 400 tons of that or 300 tons of that. The rest we can't. We are going to scrap it, but we're going to scrap it in a way that will be managed within the UK, that we're going to get carbon reporting, that we understand that that circulates throughout the UK economy rather than being shipped overseas.
And do you do that in terms of like a direct relationship, or do you have a kind of eBay platform where you can put things up for people to bid into?
It's a combination of both. We see it. You need to have what we call it's overcoming the vantage point problem, as we call it. If you can't see the value of these components in a building, then the developer, the asset owner, will naturally manage it in the lowest risk and the fastest way, which will typically be, landfills getting more expensive now, but it'll be downcycling. It'll be traditional waste management. Whereas ultimately, if you are able to tag that, if you're able to then share that information with Eoin and others, the asset owner can see, right, we have a whole market of people out here who want to make use of this. We see that value. That's the digital aspect. But then again, there's a framework. And so we've been working in London on something called the Romulus Initiative with the City of London Corporation and some other local authorities on understanding how you can have that digital framework in place while also bringing in industry and local authorities to get them together to be able to share information on what's out there, how they can pool logistics, how they can pool even storage solutions to be able to turn that into action.
Okay, and sorry.
Sorry, I've got my brain in gear in terms of enablers. The other thing we can do is support innovation through grant funding and other support. So give a quick plug for our Smart Fizz programme, Flexible Innovation Solutions, which has funded a number of quite innovative circular economy projects, a number of which are sort of digital, different ways of tracking things. But also years ago, we funded Construction Excellence in Wales, and they were extolling the virtues of BIM, Building Information Management, which is what it was called years ago, but it seems to be digital passports now seem to be the thing. So there's various tech projects we've supported, including also the digital DRS, deposit return scheme trials. We've supported that with digital tagging, unique tagging of each item of packaging. Yeah, so that's another key way that we have been supporting sort of high-tech circular economy solutions.
That's great. Nancy, you've got really complex global supply chains. How do you manage this whole process?
I don't personally, Nick. There are other people working on that. I suppose one of the things is that it's not a new aspiration or a new target. And interesting hearing about it starts from design. I mean, if you're starting from design and you're designing, you're designing circularity in, you're creating an expectation in your supply chain. I think the other value of public-facing targets is that you again are underlining an aspiration, a direction of travel that over time that supply chain is going to need to adapt to. And when you signal that intent, then innovations begin to spring up around that. Innovations come from within the business and from within the supply chain. Innovations around materials, availability of materials, and the way in which they are finding their ways into products. So I would say it's about intent, it's about, I mean, we were talking about it's beyond recycling, but I think when HP's first recycling program was I think it was in 1972, and it was a punch card system at the Palo Alto site. And I think if people start there, and you begin to build that kind of muscle memory into an organization's thinking, and then you develop public-facing targets, and then you develop a supply chain and start setting, our supply chain has sustainability scorecards against it. So there's criteria against which they need to meet. And then, I mean, the big show in town for tech companies when you are in a procurement scenario is eco-labeling. So whether it's a PEAT or TCO, you are competing on the basis of your performance in eco-labels against other vendors. And all of these have circularity criteria as a component part. So it is just in every aspect of your system, building in an expectation, a target, and a monitoring and a performance against it. So yes, it does, but it's not quick.
You've shifted to remanufacturing as well as recycling components. It's a big element of your business. Huh?
Refurbished is, yes. We have a program called Renew, and this is very much designed to meet the public sector requirements for buying refurbished as a first life device. And it's interesting listening to what Andy was saying there, because I think there's we're used to having phones as second life. There are all kinds of different areas where we're quite comfortable. Print has been well established as people taking second life devices. Laptops and computers is a bit more sluggish. There are reasons for that, but I think it's beginning to shift. And one of the things that digitization does and telemetry does is it helps organizations understand the people that are in them and how they use those devices or that equipment. And you might have intern programs or starter and leaver programs or short-term contracts, and they can begin to see a population within your employee population for which a refurbished device is a great solution. But it is about building that in. I think, yes, the refurbished hardware is enterprise, public sector, everybody is asking for it. And it's already out there. For HP, we're building a solution that we can sell, but there are plenty of companies already selling refurbished HP hardware as a business operation. So yeah, it's alive very much already.
Interesting. Eoin.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in very quickly on the innovation point, and I think it's critical. I think, as innovation manager, I have to say this, but it's also not necessarily. The innovation doesn't have to be about technology. It can be a lot of it's just the ability to think differently, to be able to take a step back and give yourself time as an organisation to take stock of who we are, what we do, how we do things, and actually can we do things differently with the resources and the capacity we already have. And that was the first step from our perspective when we started considering what circular economy could be for the business. And it wasn't necessarily, there was always an assumption that we make steel out of recycling scrap. So therefore, when the circular economy became a thing, they said, well, that's what we do. And I was very critical of that internally. So, well, no, circular economy is not what we do. we're resource efficient. Yes, we deliver a recycling economy, but true circularity is about understanding, okay, how can we do things differently? So one of the first pilot projects we did was with BAM Construction, the Plaza Cinema in Port Talbot, and we managed to, it was myself and their sustainability advisor sat down for a coffee one day and said, look, what can we do? And all we did was we introduced the person in charge of demolition from BAM to the procurement manager from BAM. And we just said, look, if you give us the scrap on this end, we'll transform it into new steel and give it back to you at that end so we can close the loop. We didn't have to change any of our process. We didn't need new technology. We just needed to utilize what we had. So we had scrap processing capability, EAF steelmaking, steel rolling, steel fabrication, and we offered those 4 elements as a service solution into BAM Construction. And it was so simple, but it just needed people thinking slightly differently. And I think that's something that we, from a supply chain perspective, if we're the lower end of the supply chain, any supplier, anybody who's already delivering solutions within the current linear economy, have the capabilities delivering something within a new circular economy just by thinking slightly differently about what they do.
And that example is a really good example of where circular economy and decarbonisation come together, isn't it? In terms of, I think through that project, you were able to reduce Scope 3 emissions.
We in theory, yes. We did the calculations ourselves. The protocols for lifecycle assessment wasn't capable of including that. So it still didn't account for the carbon savings that we were able to achieve in its lifecycle assessment. So anecdotally, yes, we were able to put those numbers in there. But in reality, the system for decarbonisation or for sustainability, inverted commas, is not set up for circularity. So it's almost contradicting each other still.
Yeah, and that's about our systems. And you mentioned muscle memory, which I think is really interesting, because I think one of the things you've been really successful at in Wales at a domestic level has been people's muscle memory in terms of domestic recycling. 2025, we moved over to kind of business separated recycling and now electrical recycling. Has that muscle memory translated to the workplace, do you think?
Quite a bit, yes, but I think there's still more to do. Muscle memory, I haven't come across that as a term before. I obviously live a sheltered life.
Like a natural reflex.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, it's still frustrating, though, that you look in recycling bins and still see contrary items in there.
For anybody who hasn't seen them, Andy's social media posts are things like, I went for a run and like people have put the wrong thing in this recycling bin. You're very observant at this level.
Yeah, it requires the community. I think the community that you're in, whether in business or at home or wherever you are, to collectively agree that it's the right thing to do and to think about it. And that's not always the case. And certainly in business and public sector bodies, it requires leadership from the top and then all the way down through the chain. I mean, I was based in Environment Agency Wales a long time ago, and we had separate recycling almost from day one because we were passionate about it. You know, we had an environmental policy, and all of the managers had it in their objectives every year to comply with the internal environment policy. You know, that's what we need everywhere, you know, alongside all the other health and safety and equality and all the other important things you need to do in the workplace. It needs to be ingrained in the thinking from the top downwards, but also get champions in the office and on the work floor to also champion these things and make sure they get the credit for that championing.
And who are the good guys and the bad guys in this? Because we hear a lot about construction, consumer products. Sectors like health, for example, which must be really, really challenging.
Yeah, health is a challenge. I mean, my father was a veterinary surgeon, and I remember he used to have stainless steel scalpels, glass syringes, all of which he autoclaved. Then, of course, moved across to plastic, single-use plastic, where everything was used once and thrown away. You know, partly for convenience, but also for sterilisation and health and safety reasons. But I am told it's perfectly feasible for the health service to go back to some of those sort of, you know, reusable sterilising techniques. So to be fair to our health service, they've got various projects underway, including a big target to reduce single-use plastic use. and they have the net zero target for 2030, like all public sector bodies do in Wales. So they've got a lot of projects, and there are innovative projects, some supported under the SBRI initiative, Small Business Research Initiative, like of reusable gowns instead of using single-use plastic gowns. Yeah. So there's a lot can be done there, and there are various tech projects involved as well in that. Remembering where we are. So.
That's great.
I thought it was an opportune time to actually bring up economics, because we seem to forget that a truly circular economy is the economics that need to change. What Andy's talking about, and it's still phenomenal. Things need to change in terms of our use of materials. But the reason we do things the way we are is because of linear economics. The reason why there's a big pile of fly tipping in a lane in, I can't remember where it is, but it's because of linear economics. The reason why we have bins outside for rubbish is linear economics. Everything, if you haven't designed and delivered a solution, whether it's a car or a laptop or a building, in the context of a truly circular economy, then it's a single-use item. And the linear economics is the reason why we're in this mess. The reason why we have 17 Sustainable Development Goals is because of linear economics. And we seem to forget that. We talk about, obviously, recycling and resource efficiency, which is all very, very good. But we also need to talk about the economics. The reason we're in this mess, the reason why we have climate change is because linear economics have created it's created the mess, created the impact, and created the need for 17 goals, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it stands to reason, if we want to truly change, we need to fully embrace a circular economic model that looks after national and international economics to allow that to happen. And we're not there yet.
Yeah, thanks, Eoin. I know, James, you want to come in on that.
Yeah, thank you. It's just really interesting, these themes, because it's I think it's emphasized for what I've learned is that there is that human element. You really need, as you say, the muscle memory. It's engaging people, the economics aspect. It's the behaviour change of what we've seen as such a critical element. What we've drawn on when we've designed things like Romulus and these initiatives is something called the mutuality of interests. And without getting too academic, it's a concept from international relations as to why independent states work together when theories of international relations say states should just be fighting each other and trying to dominate each other. But that doesn't explain the UN, it doesn't explain the World Bank. Whereas what this theory does is basically say you can still be self-interested, but if you are part of an incentive structure which actually incentivizes you collaborating rather than competing or operating independently, you're still getting your outcome you want. And we see this in construction. And what we've designed when we've designed Romulus is a system where two developers, who normally, developers care about three things. They want the building to sail through planning, they want it built as quickly as possible, and they want it let or sold as quickly as possible. That's it. They don't need to talk to another developer to do that unless they're selling the building to them. Whereas if you've now seen what's happening certainly in London and in other areas where there are carbon budgets, where there are requirements around reuse, suddenly developer A needs to talk, or not needs rather, it's in their interest to talk to developer B and say, well, we've got this material, we've got steel or we've got glazing. If we exchange it with you, then we can tell a story around reuse to the planners. We can report some carbon savings, not nearly as effectively as what Eoin said. Carbon accounting is still not there, but they're able to report some benefits which will help them get that planning, which will help them tell a reuse story to their occupiers, to their funders. And that, I feel, is really where we can see a huge amount of change and positive change rather than an appeal to the right thing. Because, call me a cynic, but I think that appeal will go so far. It goes to motivated people, but it's not enough to change behaviour fundamentally.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Nancy, where do you see this going in terms of the gradual push from customers for more evidence of circular economy? But also, I'm thinking in terms of your sector, increasing competition for raw materials. How is that going to affect your supply chains, do you think, in the future?
I think it's really front of mind for anyone who's in manufacturing, that availability of materials going forward. I think circularity is going to grow and grow. I think with customers, certainly the customers that we speak to, the idea that we've edited choice, we've made all the right decisions, here's your hardware, come back to us when it's end of life. That doesn't feel, that's not where the customer is in their mindset. They want to know a lot more about that hardware, really interested in seeing the carbon benefit within their own organization, even if at the moment it's only something we can explain to them and not something, something we can show them in reporting and data we provide them rather than something that's giving them a direct benefit. I think the employee base within organizations is motivated and quite evangelized by their organization, thinking quite laterally around, oh, okay, we've got these different devices. Some of you will be on refurbished devices and you won't be able to tell. I mean, unless you're a complete, laptop nerd where you're really looking for the most modern thing, you will not be able to tell the difference between the two devices. And there is a real, there is a real kind of value for an organization in making those choices for employees. And I think, I think of my teenage children and I think of, they don't bat an eyelid at getting tech that is Second Life as long as it does what they want it to do for gaming, whether it's their phones, whether it's whatever. Those behaviours and that cultural change is arriving in workplaces rapidly, and procurement teams will be buying against that expectation more and more.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I did say this would be a conversation. Does anybody want to ask any questions? No? Yeah, great.
Thank you. It's Costa from Rap Cymru. It's interesting what you're all saying about refurbishment, remanufacturing, and all the rest of it. So we work with manufacturers, trying to get them to integrate more recycled content into the products and more circular business models. But a lot of the challenges is getting the customers to appreciate and understand that these products are out there, and it's getting that message across that there is a benefit to buying reused, but at the same time, from the public's point of view, it's like, oh, it's second-hand, it's second-rate. I don't want that, and it's trying to get that message across that actually there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly okay, and and how do you get that message across in order to drive that demand for second-hand products?
Okay, Andy.
Yeah, a perfect example was Public Health Wales when they moved from, I think it's something like 8 old offices into one brand new building in the middle of Cardiff. And they had a really dynamic procurement lead, Sally Atwood, I think it was, who basically persuaded her procurement colleagues to allow her to procure all of the furniture remanufactured and reused. But because she didn't want the staff to feel like they were getting sort of second best, she worked really closely with the staff, brought in the suppliers, many of whom were employing people who had challenges in the workplace, and got them to explain the benefits of that employment and the environment to the staff, so that they got a really strong buzz about the whole concept. And of course, there was I think it was Ripe Office were involved with the design, so it all looked really funky furniture, brilliant design. If you go there, you would never realise that there are 2,000 items of reused and remanufactured desks, chairs, and everything else there. It won a Procura Plus award at a European level. But that was down to a very inspirational lady, Sally Atwood, who drove the whole process and got the enthusiasm of her managers, the staff, and not least the procurement team, who of course wanted to do it the traditional way. So it was quite a novel thing.
I think one of the, Nick's touched on it in terms of that muscle memory. I think the linear economy has actually created this perception that we need to buy everything new. Everything needs to be new and shiny, and that's what ultimately that's what GDP is we need to make more and more stuff and chuck away the old stuff, because there's no value in that anymore. And so that perception is there that reused, recovered, recycled product material, it's somehow defected. However, there's a number of demonstrations where that's not true, and for example, the transport industry. Things like engines in rail lines, aircraft engines are leased and you charge by the mile, and they're remanufactured and reused the whole time. So there's a number of really useful examples of where that is. Now, what we need to do is actually change that muscle memory, change that kind of perception and that automatic assumption that this sort of way of thinking and doing is wrong, and we need to kind of change the culture around our understanding of stuff and our use of stuff.
I'm just going to extend what you said slightly because I completely agree. Cars, we don't get, cars new, but we still get excited about having new cars even when it's secondhand. And there are different tracks in life where, from an end user consumer perspective, we're completely comfortable and fine with something not being brand new. And we just need to culture carry that mentality across a wider range of consumer goods, and the end user will feel, and you now are so close to experiences which will feel the exact equivalent. Like when you get a new car, it still smells wonderful, is clean, and is a fantastic experience. So if you can do that in your products, the design, if it feels great and amazing as an experience to the end user, then they will still.
Can I quickly come on? Yeah. Just very quick, an anecdote on new car smell. Years ago, I was designing in the automotive industry, and I had the privilege of spending 9 months analysing the entire life cycle of a speaker system, a BMW speaker system that I was designing, and part of that was to analyse what new car smell actually was, and when you do analyse that, it's a cocktail of VOCs, volatile organic compounds. And individual compounds are okay by themselves, and the ppms, the parts per million, are fine for human consumption. When you add them all together, that gives you that beautiful smell. That's highly toxic carcinogens that we're breathing in. And that, again, that's just an example of what linear economy does for you. So there you go.
I was just going to reflect that at consumer level, one of the areas where reuse and pre-owned has really been successful is in clothing, isn't it? And like my Gen Z kids wouldn't dream of buying new clothes now. They still want the brand, but they want it to have been worn by somebody else first. And it sounded like you were moving towards that in tech terms, in terms of it being cool. I know I've got an ancient magnesium-bodied compact laptop somewhere. I would love somebody to put new guts in it because it's just such a cool thing, such a retro thing. So I don't know, can we achieve that same cool in the business sector through your kind of work?
Absolutely. I mean, I think new is a brand. I've just recently bought one of those writing tablets because I might like to make lots of notes. And unprompted, I went onto the website and it was offering refurbished options. I'm seeing refurbished cropping up everywhere. I think refurbished is becoming this brand. It's becoming a mark where a consumer can feel, okay, I am not having that guilt about climate contributing to waste, contributing to these problems. It's addressing some unmet psychological need there. So I think we can see this start to roll out in how this is positioned and presented. Obviously, it will vary from product to product, but I'm encouraged. I really am.
I think one thing I'd add is that, even Amazon, there's you can buy Second Life products. They've got a marketplace which is specifically for Second Life, and they're starting repair as well. And you've got brands that are really going big on repair. Patagonia in the clothes industry has always been big on repair. But, in tech, you'd look at phones and handheld devices and the market for refurb there through things like back market and so on. It has been well established for many years. And like I already said, HP hardware being refurbished is not a new thing. You can buy that through any number of vendors already. It's getting there. It's getting there, and it's getting there very quickly.
I wanted to make a point, I suppose, that if you're an organisation, an SME, or as I said, if you're delivering anything within the current linear economy, you can deliver something within the circular economy, and and I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I was working as a consultant, actually working with Andy, with Welsh Government, and going out and offering advice and guidance to SMEs and manufacturers all over Wales. And one of those manufacturers was a company called Metcalfe Catering in Blaenau up in the mountains where the trees didn't grow. But they produced these wonderful commercial kitchen equipment, meat slicers, potato peelers. And they wanted some advice and guidance on how they could improve what they do, because they weren't getting any repeat custom. And the reason being is that their product was so well manufactured, so well designed, it never failed. But so they couldn't sell any more into the market. So the advice we gave them was stop selling them. Provide the products as a service solution into the market. So at least as long as the products are in service, you get paid. And you might get micropayments each day, but you get paid for a much longer period of time. And if you that therefore incentivizes people to design for quality, for longevity. And now the other problem with carbon, if doing a life cycle assessment on their products, it would be huge carbon footprint on that single-use item, if it was a single-use item. But the fact that it can spread that the impact over decades means that there's not much of an impact at all. But from a business perspective, from a business model perspective, they're now in a position to actually earn money by producing less products, if that makes sense. So there's huge options.
No, that's great. Thank you. Look, I'm getting the evils about time, so we better wrap up. But look, thanks, guys. I could talk about this stuff all day. It's been really brilliant having this conversation. Thank you so much for coming here today. And yeah, brilliant. Cheers.